guys, Doug Giles here, little Warriors and Wildmen action. Rich, back from Bali, Indonesia, Thailand, Burma. Where'd you go, buddy?
Philippines. I was in Philippines, Manila, Cebu, Davao, and then I was down in Bali, Indonesia for a couple weeks. So it was full on.
Yeah, I've got that beat. I went to Creedmoor and shot doves last Saturday.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But I think my trip was a little farther, 8,700 something miles to Bali. So,
man, that'll flatten out your ass. What'd you do? I mean, do you walk around the plane? Because I can't, I don't have any meat on my bones, man. Anytime I'm rubbing up against something, I mean, it's freaking straight, to the bone. So I get up and I do laps, If I'm not watching hunting videos or something like that, I'm freaking doing laps, man. Do you get up, move around, or you just heavily medicate, drink a couple of beers before dinner?
No, I have a ritual.
A bottle of wine
on
scotch.
On long flights like that, I have a ritual: 2 glasses of champagne, and I usually don't eat, and I try to sleep as long as I can right off the bat. And then when I get up every hour and walk around, stretch, without people getting freaked out. People are on planes, but I do. I get up and walk around, stretch a little bit, and that's what I do. It's 14 and a half hours, LA to Manila. That's a long shot.
Yeah, it is, man. And done it many times to Africa. That's a poke, baby.
Yep.
Hey, let's glad to have you back. Glad that the Warriors and Wildmen message is reaching that part of the planet. Looking forward to like we talked about before the show ramped up, for you and I to go out there and mix it up with the brothers over there. And speaking of the brothers, I don't know if you saw this, man, but frickin' Nike has hired Colin Kaepernick, yes, him, to pimp their products. My question to the Warriors and Wildmen folks is, are you going to continue to buy their crap now that Colin Kaepernick, Rich, of all frickin' people, man, of all the luminaries, of all the sports stars with great testimonies, great families, these people, it's like Dick's Sporting Goods, Rich, said, oh man, we made a mistake, and Nike's like, hey, hold my beer,
Yeah, watch this.
These people have no idea how bad a decision they just made and how it's going to just collapse, I think, their company. I could be wrong, because here's one thing, Rich, before I get your 50 cents on this, is that there is something to be said about if it repels, it sells, because I've seen, as a marketer on our store online, the stuff that's the most terse, in your face, blank you to the enemy is the stuff that really goes bonkers, man. Yep. Just like my Trump paintings and stuff. But do you think there's not enough market share to keep Nike afloat with this woeful decision?
I think the issue is so complex, and let's just start with the market aspect. Okay, here's the deal. So they dropped almost 4% at one point the first day, and then it gained a little, was back at 3%. I think it picked up a little bit more the next day. But here's the deal, man. They lost over $3 billion immediately, right, in the stock market. But here's the thing. The people that support them, they know. Let's not think for one second Nike doesn't know their demographic. And the people that are going to double down, I already see people online saying, I'm going to buy more shoes, I'm going to buy more product, I'm going to support it. Other people are lighting stuff on fire, but the stuff they're lighting on fire is already purchased. So, I don't know, man. Like you said, I think the people that are going to back them up are going to back them up. And then you could slide over and say, hey, maybe Nike is trying to support the cause. Maybe not the Kaepernick kneeling at the flag cause, but maybe there's a lot of people, Doug, that I think don't want to miss out on like being a part of the civil rights movement of today. I really do. I think there's people that think, man, people missed out on it. I don't want to miss out on it. And I think a lot of people are protest crazy because they don't want to be seen later in history to be on the wrong side. I mean, I don't know. That's my initial thoughts.
It's again, it's a bold move, man. And but like we found out since Nike came out with Kaepernick and his sacrifice everything.
Well, that's bullcrap.
Ad campaign. He didn't sacrifice shit,
he didn't
man.
Sacrifice Jack. He's a lion's sack of crap.
He's a second-string quarterback or third-string quarterback.
He's
what'd you put on Facebook?
A benched
on a bad team.
Yeah, he's benched, and then all of a sudden, when he starts dating a Muslim girl,
right
now he's against America, but it's not against America. It's like whatever, man.
Yeah, again, it's a bold move, and I got to give it to folks because, we sit with some of the best minds in marketing when we're, pitching our products and looking what we're going to bring on board as far as SKUs go for the coming year. And they said, Doug, the more the more you can repel your audience, the more, that stuff is going to sell. Nobody wants milk toast.
No,
so Nike's like, okay, let's throw it out there. But they've had Kaepernick, man, on the payroll for 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Well, Doug, and since 2011.
Oh, 2011. I thought it was 2016 or something.
2011, that dude's been on there. And so check this out. I think what you're referring to is the last couple of years, they knew they were going to use him on this deal. And that's why Kaepernick turned down a backup quarterback position with the Denver Broncos. John Elway tried to hire him, and Kaepernick turned him down, and they tried to keep it on the down low. So his whole lawsuit of nobody wants to hire me, he ain't trying to get hired because sacrifice everything don't mean anything if he got a job, right?
Yeah, and isn't it beautiful, all the revelation that's coming out about what Nike calls the most inspirational athletes of this generation? Bro, I don't follow football much. Before all this take a knee and anti-cop crap and anti-anthem blather that the Kaepernicks and his ilk started doing, I watched it on Sunday. Yeah, come home after church, drink a couple of beers, kind of take a nap, watch it on and off. Maybe me and the buddies get together for Monday night or Thursday or whatever day that they play it on. But this is I can't see that he's the most inspirational frickin' athlete, man. Second string,
no,
shitty team, and it's so weird how they pick their heroes. Kind of like picking John McCain. The left they derided him when he ran against Obama. They said, all the typical stuff that they're saying of Trump. He's a racist. He's a warmonger, which he is. I think he started every war that we've been in for the last few decades. And then all of a sudden, because he's anti-Trump, because Kaepernick is anti-anthem, anti-cop, ergo anti-Trump, then boom, they've got a divisive wedge to put into the nation. Yep. They know that there's probably a little, money pot at the end of their rainbow of strife that they're putting across the American landscape. And so they're going to run with it. And again, you got to give it to them. Just like all the other people on the left, social media giants and everybody else, these guys are playing for keeps. Here's what I think, Rich, would be a good lesson. Maybe for us not to move in those levels of angst and anger and acrimony and bellicosity that the left is, but we sure as heck better consolidate and get our act together and champion our message, because these little minorities that are going, for this craziness that we saw at the Kavanaugh meeting, the Dick's Sporting Goods. Now Levi Strauss, Rich, I don't know if you've seen this. Levi Strauss has joined with Michael Bloomberg and the anti-gun bullshit brigade.
Jeez.
We're getting Levi's. That's cowboy stuff. And I believe cowboys had this thing called a firearm.
Yep.
Yeah. For hundreds of years, or a couple of hundreds of years. Now, all of a sudden, Levi, the gene that won the West, is now anti-gun. We better get our message together. We better take our stance.
Well,
and the way we can do it
let me jump in real quick
just
to clarify something that you said, because people will take stuff out of context. But you said these minorities, and you weren't talking about racial minorities. You were talking about the small group of people that are stirring it up. That a small group of people are acting stupid like that, and it's affecting everybody. So you say minorities, somebody might think that was a racist statement, and it's not. You're saying small group of people, this minority that's causing problems, with the gun stuff and everything else, makes no sense. Makes no sense, and then they get us all stirred up. Here's something that I think is huge too, Doug. So I've been talking to a pastor on Twitter. I don't know him. I've never met him. He's a black pastor. He's a big church. And I don't know. I really like this guy. I like his message, the stuff that he preaches. I don't like his politics. We're 180 out. So I become friends with him. We're talking, and I'm trying to understand what he's saying about some things. And there's some things we're not going to agree on, right? Like, check this out. The flag issue. You know, a lot of people's point is he's not protesting the flag. He's protesting the injustice. You know, it's not. And what I'm trying to express to this pastor is that my issue is not Colin Kaepernick protesting. My issue is not even that what the protest has become is not what Kaepernick started it as. I think it's bullcrap. I think he protested America and then he dialed it down to something that could make sense and get some support. That's what I think. But let's say that his protest is pure. You know, let's talk about black people being killed by the police. You know, that's probably got to be investigated and dealt with. Let's talk about black people being profiled by the police. That's definitely an issue. But here's my thing. We can't even have a discussion about it because kneeling during the national anthem and disrespecting the flag is so divisive that we can't get to the discussion.
Bro, they don't want to discuss anything.
Yeah,
they want obedience.
But here's the deal, Doug. This is what I'm starting to understand. There are people that want to get to the discussion.
Right.
Kaepernick may not be him, and there might be a lot of people that are idiots on the other side. But there are a lot of people that are like, what about these racial injustices? And when I think about it, I'm like, well, yeah. I'm not trying to say there aren't racial injustices. I'm not trying to say the stuff with the cops aren't bad. I'm trying to say you're pissing me off so much by disrespecting the flag in our country that I don't even want to talk to you about it. That's my point. Like, protest a different way because you might find that I'm on your side. Right. But I can't be on your side when you disrespect the flag that represents the country, that acknowledges and gives you the right, doesn't give you the right, but recognizes your right to protest. Well, to me, that doesn't make sense. So I'm at a speed bump that I can't get over so we can have the discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. You know, if you want to win friends and influence people, you seek to, you know, be understood instead of make them understand you. You gotta know who you're discussing what with,
right?
And if you get a whole stack of people that like this thing called America, and you know, and I didn't used to like the cops, Rich. I don't know about you, but I was a rapscallion. I broke the law, did drugs. I had a fast car. Cops represented, kind of a stick in my wheel, if you will. And I didn't really dig them. Matter of fact, I used to throw rocks at cop cars, me and my buddies, just to piss them off and get them to chase us. But that was because I was doing bad stuff. I was a drug dealer. It was my before Christ days. So yeah, me and the cops weren't on too friendly of terms. And you know, like that pastor at Aretha Franklin's funeral that got into such deep shit with her family because he said, you guys don't believe that Black Lives Matter, and he's a black pastor. He said, I'll take you serious when you stop killing each other.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what's going down in Chicago. Is that the cops' problem? I believe it's black on black crime.
Right.
And that's Obama's dreamland, which Rahm Emanuel said yesterday he's not going to seek a third term as mayor over. But, you know, going back to your point, man, first of all, in their divisive disrespect for all things Americana, I think it's, I don't think they want to discuss, because here's something that, you know, that I've noticed about the left. Number one, their points aren't salient. They're irrational. You know, they're not winning people over with, you know, their worldview and their hard-won ideas. So they've got to go to this extreme. Anybody who opposes them, it's immediately a racist, and you can't have any kind of discussion with them whatsoever. So it boils down to bullying and obedience. And I've heard, I don't know how many times, man, and we've covered it over at Clash Daily, you know, a lot since Kaepernick pulled that initial stunt with his cop pig socks. 2 years ago. I've heard a lot of these guys rattle on about what they're actually after, but to me, there's nothing really definitive. What
can we do to change it?
Yeah, so it's so again, to me it comes down to thought police, uniformity of speech, bullying, cowing people, and unless you completely obey them in whatever they're after, then you're just a racist and you're part of the problem.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with that, but I also think there's a different perspective on the difference between the left and the difference between black people, which I know a lot of black people support the Democrats and they would be a part of the left. But I think there are a lot of people that feel like, hey, some things are not right. And I was watching a documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what the name of it was, but they were talking about prosecutors, and in the United States, that more than 85% of cases never go to trial. And prosecutors make their record by convictions, which when we think about justice, that doesn't make sense. A good prosecutor should be somebody who gets to the truth, which it shouldn't be a conviction rate. It should be some people being found innocent, right? I mean, that's the idea of justice. But we have this thing where this prosecutor has a 97% conviction rate, and we go, yeah, he's good. Well, he's good, but is it justice, right? So I was watching this thing. It was talking about 85%, more than 85% of cases never go to trial. And you know why they don't, Doug? Because the prosecutors ramp up the charges and put these extreme prison terms over the defendant. And then they tell them, if you plea bargain down to this thing, then we'll let you off. And because they hang this threat of this prison sentence that doesn't match the crime over these people's heads, everybody's taking plea bargains and people aren't getting their day in court. And it should be the thing that you're offering me right now should be what we should do if we go to court. If that's the possible punishment for the crime, then let's go to court and see if I deserve that. Not if you fight me, now you're getting 10 years in prison instead of, 3 years of probation. Like, it's either the punishment for the crime. All this stuff is bull crap, and people aren't getting their day in court because they're afraid. Okay, now you take the number of black people that are facing that, and it's disproportionate. Obviously, we know a lot of that's socioeconomic and the things that are happening in the ghettos and the projects, and that's the way it is. Okay, we get that. But here's the deal. Black people are getting much longer prison and jail sentences than white people for first offense similar crimes across the board in America. Okay, I saw that. I looked it up. I started researching it. It's true. I'm not good with that. That's not okay with me, okay? All right, so let's go back to the Kaepernick thing. He has a protest. He doesn't think that it's right. Okay, I agree with that. But you're disrespecting the flag, so I can't even have the conversation with you because you're retarded. So when I look at these things, I see these atrocities. Okay, and you're talking about cops. There were a time when you're breaking the law and you don't like cops, and I was in the same place. But how about what's happening with Hillary Clinton? She gets a pass on everything. These people are leaking, like we've been talking about. We talked with Judge Janine. People are leaking confidential information. They don't get in trouble. I would have went to prison for that. So I have a complete mistrust of the system, the justice system, the government system, and for me too, because I'm not doing anything wrong and I don't trust any of them. And so being a black person, I think it's even multiplied. So I'm on their side on the issue, Doug. Yeah. I can't stand Kaepernick because I think he's an opportunistic douchebag. I think he's a liar. I think he's anti-American. I think he's doing it to get paid. And I think he's a sellout. But I think there are people backing him up that have a point. But I can't get past the protests. So I don't know, man. I'm just ranting.
Yeah, and I agree with you, man. I'd hate to be a poor black kid that, stole, I don't know, Skittles and a Monster energy drink and be looking at 15 years or some kind of crap like that.
Right.
Simply because I can't afford any kind of defense. Or
And
like
that's
you said,
a fact, Doug. That's a fact. The lawyer that you can afford makes the difference.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. So you and I both agree that Kaepernick is not our cup of tea.
No.
Okay. And who out there, from a sports standpoint, just take a black guy. Okay. Let's keep us white devils out of it. No offense to the Hispanics. We'll remove them from the equation. Who out there is doing it right? Who's bringing attention to these inequities and absurdities? Who's the anti-Kaepernick who's using his platform as a sports star to bring attention to this kind of stuff that is in desperate need of reform, like our prison systems and stuff?
Well, I think
anybody come to mind at all?
Well,
first name.
You see somebody like Larry Fitzgerald on the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
That guy is all about community. He's all about, the guy's a top-notch guy. When he went out of bounds one time, he shook hands with a disabled veteran that was in a wheelchair. I mean, the guy's all about it. But he's all for supporting, the cause and what's happening. But he doesn't kneel during the anthem. He's not going to do that, right? So, and then you have a lot of black athletes the Nike ad didn't only feature Kaepernick. It featured other black athletes, but they're not kneeling during the protest. And my thing is, why don't we go with them? And we're all focusing on Kaepernick because, they put this thing that says believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. That's a slap in the face to everybody because he didn't sacrifice anything. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to go away from your point. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now there is again some stellar athletes. I'm not a huge LeBron James fan at all. I think some of the digs he's taken at Trump have been very unfair to Donald, or the president, especially when you look at what he's done to black unemployment, completely devastated it. There's more jobs than people out there right now. Same thing for women and Hispanics. So I think his little terse little tidbits that he tosses at El Presidente, I'm talking about number 45, I think that's a bridge too far for me, and I think he's just playing to a political base. However, and agree from a political standpoint, a worldview standpoint, I don't agree where he's coming from. But it's being done a little bit more savory than Kaepernick and some of the other radicals on the left that are trying to get us to obey. One of the things that I see, take what that restaurant did to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the Red Hen restaurant. They thought that they were, going to give Sarah a black eye and that everybody was going to love them for shaming Sarah. And they followed her. When they ran her out of the restaurant, followed her across the street, shamed her over there. Their town's taking a big hit right now because of the backlash that has come to that town, and tourists are saying, you know what, you do that kind of crap to a lady who is just, I think she's doing it in a gracious and powerful, and she's probably one of the best presidential spokesperson I've ever seen, man. And it's not just because, she's doing it for Trump. She's really good at what she does. And yet, here they were thinking that, we're going to bully her out of our restaurant. And people said, you know what? We're not coming to your town anymore. We're not going to eat your damn food. Yep. And it's the same thing that they did with Kavanaugh yesterday at his appointment hearing.
Ridiculous.
They went nuts, brother. Absolutely nuts. And, it's kind of like also, man, the Gay Pride March, like the Folsom Street Fair in San Francisco. I don't know if you've seen that zoo.
I've seen pictures of that, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Fantasy Fest down in Key West. I just completely blew out of Key West when we'd be down there fishing because that makes a zoo look like a Japanese IBM meeting. I mean, it is completely off the rails vulgarity and craziness. And look, I'm not a lily white penitent monk. I've seen and done a lot of bad things, and but I don't think they help the cause and in regards to winning America with the Kaepernick type crap that you brought up, with the screeching and the craziness that the soy boys and Muslims like Linda, what I can't remember her name, Sour or whatever her name is, and then all the other crazy radical feminists yesterday. I don't think they're helping America say, you know what? That's the kind of party, that's the kind of representation that I want. Same thing with gays. If you're going to mock the Last Supper, and you're going to put big, huge black dildos on the table in front of your gay Jesus, you're not going to make us parasympathetic with your plight.
And
you're
that's
just completely running everybody off who's got a lick of frickin' sense, man.
See, Doug, that's what you're saying right there. I think, like, okay, for a Christian, what's supposed to be a Christian stance? You know, and can Christians disagree on some of the stuff? They can. But when it comes to racism, obviously as a Christian, you don't get to have your own opinion on that. You don't get to be a racist. Heaven's going to be every tribe and tongue. That's what it says in Revelation. And there's only two races of people. There's the Adamic race of people, the people that were all born into sin, and then the people that were born again in Christ, and we become a new creation. That's a new race. That's a new race of person. It says there's no longer Jew nor Greek nor Gentile. We're two races of people, before Christ, after Christ. Every person, they had shown that our genes, our DNA, go back to a single source. So we're all related. We all come from the same source. Okay, so what's the issue? The issue really becomes culture. And if we're talking about culture, we're talking about racism. As Christians, we have to figure out a way to help each other to become more Christ-like, like heaven's culture, but we don't get to be a racist.
So what do you do, man, from a pastoral standpoint? Have you brought up this divisive issue and brought it home to your congregation and where you do other conferences and about that? Listen, hey, there's the first man, and then there's the last man. There's the first Adam, and there's the second Adam. Right. And there's nothing else. And like you said, Paul said, there is. In Christ, no more this, that, this, that. That's gone. If you're a believer, that stuff's history. But you look at most Sunday morning services, it's probably the most segregated day in America. It's true. Week after week, man.
But let me throw this out there. I think this is interesting. My churches pretty much represent the communities that we're in, which, you know, that's the way it is. I'm glad about that. I don't know what we did to do that, because I don't know what you have to do to segregate a congregation. I don't know how to segregate it. I didn't know how to integrate it. It's just the people where we live. But the pastor that I was talking to you about, he said something interesting. He said that his church is almost completely black. It's a very, very large church. And he said he gets a lot of support from white people, but from far away, because it's not accepted in the area of the country that they're in. White people will not sit under a black pastor. And when he messaged me that, Doug, I read that, and I think I knew it to be true when he said it, but it still shocked me, because I had never considered it like that. I'm not trying to be like, I would not care if my pastor was black. I don't care.
Bro, for the record, anybody who's going to glam onto our podcast and say, aha, Doug and Rich is racist. My pastor for, I think, nearly 8 years was black. So, hello, wasn't a problem to me.
Well,
the thing that I look for, Rich, was this thing called anointing.
Yep.
Leadership.
Integrity.
Fidelity to the scripture.
That's it.
Yeah, that's what I look for.
Well, check this out. My pastor for years was or is from Colombia, but I was under a pastor from Colombia. He doesn't even speak English. We had to use translator.
Rich, let me interrupt you.
Yeah, go for it.
Again, for clarity purposes, I frickin' love black churches. You know why? Because they talk back to you. When you're preaching, you get. It's not like you're talking to the cold bucket brigade, the frozen chosen white people, who they don't say they don't say amen, they don't scream and shout, they don't. A lot of them don't bust loose during praise and worship. I love that. If you could sit me in the middle. Now, unfortunately, where I live, way out in the country, I'd have to drive like 2 hours to find an energetic place like that. So all the stuff about, you guys are racist. It's like, no, my wife taught at a low-income school in West Broward for 17 years. Rich, 99.9% of them were black. She hugged them, loved them, did Bible studies with them, let them cry on her shoulder when their moms left or their dad left, and they're just going through these horrific type of difficulties and hardships, in these low-income places in Miramar, Florida. So my daughters, both of them, went to black elementaries, predominantly black elementaries in northeast Miami-Dade County. So again, people, I hate to put it to you like this, but kiss my ass when it comes to these charges of racism.
Well, that's the
We're
thing
just talking about, can we have a conversation? If you got real problems, and you do, as you pointed out, and then that Netflix special or whatever, that stuff is real, man. And I feel, and there needs to be prison reform and all kinds of other stuff. But you're just going to stick a big wedge, and you're going to separate people to where you can't even calm down and have a conversation if you continue with that slash and burn motif.
Exactly, Doug. And what you said, I think that's a key thing. It's like, if you don't agree with Kaepernick, you're a racist. It's like, I don't agree with whoever I don't want to agree with, and I don't care what your color is. Doug, I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're Mexican, Asian, black. If I disagree with you, I disagree with you. And if you want to excuse yourself from answering and debating and discussing and reasoning and making real points, you can call me a racist. But that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
That's a cop-out, Doug. I have valid points and valid reasons, and none of them are because Kaepernick is black. That's not the reason. So I just reject that. But back to the thing with my pastor. My pastor is Colombian. I was under him for years. Worked with him, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And
you weren't on, oh, never mind, go ahead.
And a pastor, not a pastor, a guy from Mexico asked me, he said, well, what's it like being under a Mexican pastor? And I said, oh, I'm not under a Mexican pastor. I'm under a Colombian pastor. And he goes, same thing. I said, no, it's actually not the same thing. Those are two different countries. You don't want to be Colombian. He doesn't want to be Mexican. He probably wouldn't like you saying that. And but honestly, Doug, when he was asking me, I was missing the point because that's not my perspective, right? And he says, I said, well, we use a translator, but I call him on his birthday. He was in church. He answered the phone. I tried to say in Spanish. He tried to say in English. Told him, happy birthday. I love you. He's happy. I was happy. I said, I don't understand what your point is. And he said, well, what's it like for a Caucasian to be under the authority of a Hispanic pastor? And I said, I don't know. I've literally never even considered what you're saying. I said, I don't think like that. I don't even know what, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so perfect. I don't see color. He's a pastor of a massive church that built that church from his living room, who was teaching me the ministry. I never thought, well, you don't get to do it because you don't know English or because you're from Colombia. That doesn't make a difference to me, man. Like, I can't get the whole, everybody has to be a racist. I'm not a racist.
Yeah.
If you want to call me a racist, we can't have a conversation. How can we have a conversation?
It's wild. I did a lot of ministry in South Africa, huge movement. I mean, just an amazing thing of God that was going down over there prior to the election that they had in 1994 and after for many, many years. And I would be sitting at the pastors' conference, and there you got a mix of English, Afrikaans, then you have what they call the blacks, which are people who are, pure black, and then the coloreds, which are a mix between the black and the white. And I would be sitting with all these guys, and we're talking about, the future and vision and just the incredible things that God was doing, very multi-dimensional, multiracial congregations. And you got to remember, this is in frickin' South Africa.
Yep.
During apartheid, in the transition to Mandela's presidency, and then after Mandela was seated there as president of South Africa, the tension in the nation was palpable, but in that church, bro, I'm telling you, man, I didn't I didn't look at any of the black guys. I didn't look at the colored leaders. I didn't look at the former Afrikaan, the Boers, and I didn't look at the English as these different entities. They were frickin' brothers in Christ. They loved the same God. Very few of them, from the black standpoint or from the colored standpoint, had any kind of chip on their shoulder. They were willing to build. They're ready to create a new South Africa. And I got to tell you, man, it was a hot tub, bubbly moment for a good 10, 15 years there that I got to spend with those guys. Yeah. And again, not a frickin' racial bone in their body. They served people in the informal townships. They would bus them in by 20, 30 buses, bring them in, feed them, help them in their communities, help them elevate their living and their lifestyle. And again, it was a beautiful thing. And I think the thing that and I know my website's called Clash, and I like conflict, and I still like conflict because I think it's a difference of opinion that gives you a good horse race. Yep. I want the conflict and the conversation to be hot and heavy, but man, there's got to come time here in America for civil minds to prevail and civil discourse. Yep. Or this shit's going to turn into frickin' Thunderdome, man. Hey,
and you said something that's interesting. You said they were busing people in from the townships, and the townships, for people that don't know, during apartheid, they took land away from black people. They took their houses away from them. They forced them into these squatter camps, basically, with no running water, no electricity.
Of millions of people.
Yeah, millions of people. Not like 20 people, like millions. And so some people would hear that and say, well, they put them there, they should bus them out. But my thing is this, and this is the point I think that we're making, Doug. The church didn't put them there. Now, some people might say, well, the church was a part of it. Not Christ's church. Maybe the church, funky, whoever was involved. But the church has always cared about that, and the church is trying to make it better. And that's why they're reaching out to the townships. They're not saying, too bad that's where you are. They're trying to make a difference. A friend of mine has a church there. His church is 12,000 people, Doug. Half of every dollar that comes into that church goes to feed children in the townships, because it's not right, because they're trying to make it. And that's where I'm at. What you're saying, let's make a difference. But we have to be able to talk about it. You can't call me a racist and now I'm not allowed to help. Right. And then you also, here's another thing. You don't get to define the help that I'm going to give. I get to do what I want to do, what Christ tells me to do. You don't get to tell me what to do, because that's unjust. You know what? I have never owned a slave. I've never supported slavery. I've never thought it was a good thing. So you don't get to tell me what I owe you and what I have to do, because what I owe you is the respect of another human being, and I owe you the respect to sit down and listen to you. But you know what? You have to listen to me, and we need to figure it out together, rather than being so divisive and just making this line where we can't talk. Because you're right, nothing gets fixed like that.
Hey, and just an FYI for those who think, man, them white Christians, they're pro-slavery. Two names, Charles Finney and William Wilberforce.
Come on.
And again, those are just, the two luminaries that rise to the surface in my worrying tin brain that's clogged with too much bong resin from my teenage years. But these guys were very faithful Christians to the Scripture.
Yep.
They saw that it was an abomination to treat anybody like that. And the same thing goes, with the raging feminist. I love it when the feminists call me a misogynist, because I think that masculinity isn't toxic. And if it is toxic, Rich, call me radioactive, because I believe that men are supposed to be providers, protectors, hunters, and heroes, and it's supposed to be under the governance as Christ is our captain. Now, if that all of a sudden is a bad thing, then call me bad. But you can't call me a misogynist, because I've got two of the most alpha female daughters on the planet. I am so into girl power. I don't know if you can see it in my screenshot, but over my shoulder is a picture of Raquel Welch that I just painted carrying a 6-shooter. I'm all about girls kicking ass and taking names. What I'm not about is misandry, this man hatred that is spewed to where they're trying to shame men away from, their God-given testosterone fog and their leadership skills that they're supposed to bring forth to this planet to bless it. So you get all these, you get all the extremists on the left. All I got to say, if you got relatives or if you're somebody in the media that really loves this kind of rancor, is that you are driving people away from your cause. They're not going to be sympathetic to your plight. You're not going to get us to obey. And the more you screech, the more you blather, the more you yarble, the more the nation starts going, well, I don't really understand conservatism or libertarianism, but I'm turning this bus center right because you guys are batshit lunatic. Nobody can talk to you. No one can reason with you. And especially if you're a Christian, Isaiah said, and this is God talking to his people, and he said, can we reason together? Can you come and reason together? And this is God talking to a clod, sin-laden maggots that walk around staring at cell phones, and he's wanting to reason with us. I think we ought to. I'd love it to get, and this is what I dig about the whole podcast environment. You see guys like Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson coming from different polar opposites, and they sit there during the podcast and they have these great discussions. And Sam Harris talking with Jordan Peterson. What an incredible podcast. I wouldn't call Jordan Peterson this rabid Christian, but he definitely supports the meta-narratives that are in the Bible, where Sam Harris thinks it's a mental disease. And yet they sit there for 3 hours, man, and they discuss this stuff, and the podcast explodes because people want to hear civil discussion instead of just
develop some ideas. Bam! Hey, Doug, guess what? When I'm talking to people, I'm not afraid to change my ideas or to change my mind. I'm pretty sure that's called learning, isn't it?
You give me a good argument, and you trump me in regards to something that I've held on to for 55, going on 56 years. And you know what? This old dog will learn a new trick.
That's right, and that's what I'm trying to understand where people are coming from, and I'm trying to get past, like I said, the flag thing. The flag thing's not okay for me. I'm never going to be okay with it. I'm never going to agree with it. I don't care what you have to say about it. It's the wrong protest, the wrong way. I don't like it. That's it on the flag. But but setting that aside, I'm trying to look at the issues that some of the people are talking about, because I also have to set Kaepernick aside because I do not respect him. I think he's full of crap. I think he's a hireling. I think he's interested in getting paid, and I think he's a poor representative for anyone. So I set him aside, and then when I get past those two things, I can hear some things. You know what I'm saying? And I think that the people that are trying to talk to us and hear what we're having to say, whatever the main things are that are roadblocks, maybe you could say we don't agree on that, set that aside, and then get down to some discussions. Let's just say, all right, we don't agree on that. Can we talk about some other things? And I think we could come with some better solutions.
Yeah, again, but that requires this thing called maturity. That requires you being on an even keel. And again, putting your pistol on the table, putting your soapbox, to the side, and just listen. And like you said, some of the stuff that they are against and what's happening in their communities and things, it's bad. But again, in regards to the Chicago environment and what the black pastor said at Aretha Franklin's funeral, boy, that's a huge hurdle. And I'm glad that you didn't say it and I didn't say it, Rich, because we'd probably be blacklisted forever.
But I've been saying it, and I know you've been saying it. Here's the problem.
Chris Rock says it.
They will discount everything that he says. They won't listen to him. The black community won't listen to him.
Yeah,
and so what's the answer? It's like, If I tell them, you don't know what, you've never been black. Okay. If a black person tells them you're not black enough. And it's like, at some point, we have to start to address the things that are destroying the black community so that everyone can help and make it better. Because guess what? It's not just the black community, Doug. It's America. It's America. America is not a color. It's an idea. We are here together. We're Americans. Let's figure that out. And on top of that, which trumps that 100 times over, we're supposed to be Christians. And we should be helping each other. We should be supporting each other. We shouldn't be fighting with each other. And we should figure it out.
Yeah, in America, again, you know, and we've said it a gazillion times, obviously, it's not a perfect place. And it's true that every nation sucks, but America sucks less.
Yeah.
And you try that kind of stamping your feet and that kind of protest in Liberia or Iran,
yeah,
or Pakistan, or some place where there is no recourse to address any kind of grievances whatsoever. We're going to throw your ass off a bridge. We're going to cut your head off and put it on the gate, you know, to the city. And again, you know, that's what makes our country. That's what makes our country great, man. Is that you can have the difference of opinion, and it's the one that is reasonable, rational, and it applies not to just us, but to everybody. And I think, again, you know, that's what has made this grand experiment in self-governance the incredible benevolent blessing that it's been to this planet. Hey, Rich, I got to run, big dog. What does the Warrior and Wildmen listener, follower, subscriber need to do?
They need to remember what Jesus said when they asked him what the most important commandment was. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Because all the law and the prophets hang on these two things. Those are the most important things. So as Christians, that's where we stand. That's where we are on racism. It's not going to get it. But also, we have to take responsibility for what's going on in our own lives. Warriors and Wildmen, go subscribe, rate us, review us, comment, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Join the Warriors and Wildmen closed group tribe on Facebook, and we can talk about real things, and you can talk to us. We'll talk back with you. And Warriors and Wildmen.